Hi, this is James, and I'm making a video again. I'm making a video partially because of a Substack article or essay I posted. Check it out if you want to check it out. But it's about how I have music done and why I'm not releasing it. And to briefly kind of explain why I made that was because I do have like 9 songs ready, an album done. It's coherent. It's better than anything else I've done by a good margin, and I like it. I actually like it this time. I genuinely like all the songs on there, and I can defend all of them on the merits of their artistry, which I probably couldn't say about everything else I've done, because I'm a believer in like releasing what I have, making it accurate, you know? In this case, I wanted to actually be a little bit more of a perfectionist than normal, and while I don't believe this is perfect what I'm releasing, I don't believe good art is perfect. It kind of like accurately represents me while also containing certain values, like a quantifiable value of quality to it that I do believe in. Yeah, part of the essay itself was relating to how I kind of have a self-imposed belief that relates to the quality of my own art. That is that I believe that since it's not at the same level internally, or cognitively, I should say, where I view it compared to the art that of like my favorite stuff, you know, the stuff I consider to be like the greats, because I'm not currently there at the age I'm at now, that somehow means I'm immune to asking the same questions about my art that the great artists do. And what I found about that was that there was a sort of arrogance in that, right? Like there is something arrogant about the belief that you're in some way not having to consider the same things, not having to question whether or not you're being, derivative of something, or not question whether or not you're doing something too abstract, or things that you assume would only apply to artists who accomplish certain things. But it's like, part of the reason why they accomplish those things is because they ask questions. And it only helps you improve when you actually really consider that. Is this intentional? Why do I like this? Why do I not like it? Was this a mistake that I now like? Or is this a mistake I need to fix? So things like that like naturally happen, but like, you know, you consider it a different way when you view your art kind of differently. And what I kind of realized through it was that I perceive art that I relate to in a certain way of not being capable of being a certain quality, because I find the relatability in it. And this is part of why I think it relates to my own work so much, because it's the most relatable music out there, right? I made it. But with relatable art, I think there's this sort of assumption that the more it is that way, the more you kind of remove it from the realm of goodness and beauty, because your perspective of it is that it's like a gimmick. The relatability is a gimmick, and it's kind of internalized, because when you first start listening to music, that's all you kind of care about. Like that's when you're like, 13 years old, and you're like, maybe 21 Pilots is the greatest band of all time. And then you like get old and you're like, what was I thinking? But it's because you only valued like, yeah, it's like relatable when you're 13. That being said, like there's stuff that's relatable when you're 13. That's great. I mean, like I love OK Computer, and that album was like super important to me when I was 13. I still hold that relatability as being an issue in some of the other stuff and within my own work. And that's such a strange internalized thing. But this particularly applies to a generational thing, right? Art that is more designed for my generation, I feel like I'm either way more lenient to it. Like take the show I Love LA. I was extremely lenient when I watched the show with like any mistakes. I was always like, yeah, but like they're doing it the right way. Like that was kind of my perspective the whole time. I don't think the show is perfect by any means, but I feel like I was giving a lot of excuses for like moments of poor writing, or maybe not the best execution. I kept internally thinking like, well, but it's accurate. And it's like, yeah, I guess it's accurate, but it doesn't mean it's great. But at the same time, I think when I perceive music that's more designed for my generation, I kind of find it annoying because it reflects my generation accurately. And while this is where the hypocrisy kind of lies, I perceive film to be good when it's more accurate in its portrayal. Like I love the movie Slacker. It's a very accurate portrayal of a certain sort of thing. That being said, it doesn't have any indicator of quality. Whereas with music, I find it to be like a gimmick entirely. And part of this is like due to the way I've started engaging with music over the past 2.5 years. I've started to have this like growing acceptance of the relatability. You know, my favorite band now is largely based out of relatability to them. You know, like that was the catalyst for my enjoyment of them. And now I'm finding I try to force myself to appreciate things that are relatable sonically to how I think of music. And that's such a bad way of thinking, because it's like, who's to say what I'm really influenced by, you know? Like, I feel like there's an assumption, because it's like, I mean, with the movie Slacker, it's like, yeah, like that movie, I relate to meeting people who are similar, or like even living lives that are in some way similar to certain characters or people portrayed. That being said, it's like, I would never find the movie influential to my life. And does that mean the movie was a failure? No. Even though it's relatable. So I think there's a conflation of what's relatable with what's an influence. And not only that, with quality among all of that. Because you want to hold the things that you find influential to be of the highest quality. Not the relatability aspect. Because relatable you can have reluctantly. Whereas with influence, it's more of a choice that you think it is. It's not really a choice, and that's part of the deception of it, right? Is it's like no matter what, like influence is going to happen. And I think tying this to, I mean, I might title the video this, I might not, and I might actually make a separate video more in depth about this, is cultural pessimism. And what I mean by this is the general sentiment that like art right now is bad, and it's bad due to broader cultural trends that we can't really do anything about. And I think that's such a dumb way to think, because like, I don't know, I talk about hauntology a lot, and like, to summarize hauntology, it's the idea that there aren't like new ideas coming out, because a lot of things are done in reaction to past things or an emulation of past things. And that's a hyper simplified view. And while I think this is true at a grand scale, what I forget is that there's nothing preventing me at the individual level to combat that. And that's what I think I struggled with, because I had this cultural pessimism because I assumed everything was going to be that way. I had a pessimism about my own music because I was like, I'm not reinventing the wheel. I'm not creating something of the highest quality. What's good about it? And then I remembered, like, that's not the point of music. It's not even like my favorite art. Like, my favorite art rarely is reinventing the wheel, and it's definitely not the shit that's just the highest quality. Like, to me, like, the best quality music you can probably find right now is Sampha. Sampha is phenomenal. I like Sampha's voice. The production is pristine. There's a lot of things about it that are technically perfect. But to me, it's not always stuff that I get the same emotional connection to that other people do. So that means it's any indicator of quality that, you know what I mean, that's technically perfect. Not really. And it's not purely the relatability aspect, but the broader point I'm making is it's somewhere in between. And while moderation is rarely something that seems like something that would propel radicalism in art, in some way, that sort of moderation is required. I'm not talking about ambition, because I think ambition is different. There's artistic ambition, which can lead to like new ideas, but it doesn't inherently indicate like total newness, and it can also be newness by proxy, in the sense of it's either new to you or it's something that doesn't need to be new. And it's in no way a negative, because I think it should be tried. I like when things are different and tried. That's kind of part of the broader point I'm making. But I think the cultural pessimism came in because I had this internalized view of this is what we're capable of now. And the irony is that there's so much new stuff, and even the stuff that's being done in reference to past things are being done in an inventive way. How do you explain snow strippers to people 20 years ago? And it is, especially if you're referencing indie sleaze, they're going to be like, what is indie sleaze? Like, at the time, people weren't calling stuff that. Especially if you're like, oh, they're like kind of indie sleaze revival, but also club revival, but also none of that and hyper pop influence. Like, you know what I mean? There's new stuff coming out there. I think there's like the misnomer that we've pushed things so far in terms of like, we've listened to Sun Zero and you know, just straight noise. And that in some way is indicative of having maximized the potential of art to experiment and create new things. And I don't want to misinterpret hauntology here, because I don't think hauntology is the argument that there is no potential for new things to be created. I think it is the idea of broader cultural waves. And I think I find myself too caught up in the idea of trying to chase after the past thing that doesn't exist anymore. Why do I care about the dissolving of the monoculture when I can just move on and adjust my life to be around that as I relate to the arts? You know what I mean? Like it seems like a pretend thing, and you're actually feeding into the hauntology to be so obsessed with the idea of the lack of something new when you could just be engaging with something new. I was listening to some new artists recently that I don't normally listen to. I was listening to Ear, and they were really good, and they reminded me of the Postal Service. And yeah, I guess it's because they have some glitchy drums and emotional chords and stuff. But I can't imagine talking about the Postal Service and then showing someone Ear and being like, you'll like this. Because it doesn't make sense. So I think hauntology is inherently part of how broader consumption is. But I think it's truly playing pretend, and it's more about the willingness of the audience to engage with things at a certain level and aesthetically label things. Like that is feeding into it more than actually just engaging with the art itself. I think so much art is being made, even on an individual level, that is quality and good and worth listening to and giving an audience. So yeah, I think that's probably why I'll release my music at some point. Maybe a surprise drop. Who knows? Who knows when it will come out? But regardless, it's not like stuff you've heard before, and it's not because it's experimental either. It's just not like stuff you've heard before. So, thanks for watching. Subscribe or like the video.